let's just assume that you really want to start this business and you want to go after it. And let's assume that the business is not going to be profitable at least the first year, maybe the first 2 or 3 years. So if that's the case, then I kind of want to dial it back. What's the end goal? Because I want to make sure the reality is spoken about too. And I think that's where enthusiasm and excitement are fuel, but they are not the motor in the vehicle. I can take a bunch of gasoline and dump it in a car that doesn't have good mechanics, and it's not taking me any further. It's not really helping. So here's where I want to mechanically talk about it a little bit more and say, like, okay, what's the motor that's running this thing? What's the reality to like how fast we're going to go, how far we're going to go? What may we have to supplement in the course of that? Like, what's the reality of, okay, if I'm going to restore a car, how long is it going to take before that car is ready to show up to a car show? Is it a year? Is it 2 years? Is it 3 years? You know? And then how long am I going to give myself to fund building that car over the next 1, 2, or 3 years? Because I would be foolish to say I want to build and restore a vehicle and not have sufficient funds to supplement my livelihood as well as putting money into the business. Because here's the practical side of it too. If you're starting a business, you're not making any money. You're spending a lot of money, and you don't want to look at it as spending as much as you want to look at it investing, but there's no way around it. From the minute you file your LLC, then they're going to take you to the service vendors and they're going to want a credit card because they're going to charge you. All throughout, you're going to be investing, equipment, time, learning, education. You're going to continue to invest in your business throughout. So how are you going to do that without showing up to the mechanic and saying, I just want this beautiful car done, and not understanding that it's going to take thousands and thousands of dollars, and it's going to take weeks and weeks and weeks, if not months, or if not years and years, right? Depending on how beautiful you want this thing to go. And ultimately, the beauty is in the investment in the beginning, right? What I would suggest is, especially for somebody like you, there's a lot of mechanical pieces to figure out before you leave your profession, because you have to try to figure out how your profession can help provide the money to fund for the business. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
My goal doing this for 17 years is not to get guys so hyped up on starting a business that they're one of the statistics of the 80-90% that fail. And I'd rather have the really, really hard, tough conversation now, and then you lay your head down at night and say, you know what? That doesn't sound very enticing. Doesn't sound like a good time to me. Maybe I want to be a detective. Because here's the reality. How old are you, Isaiah?
23 now.
Okay, so 23. I mean, I'm 34. I talked to some guys who are in their 30s or in their 40s, and they're looking to make a career change and shift. When you're younger, you have years to invest and spend. I've got 4 kids. I can't go out there and invest and fail and not bring back a return. Those kids will be hungry, So early on, when I was 18 starting my business, man, I could not know anything and go out there and not make any money. And that was fine because we didn't have any kids and I was just dating. And in today's world though, like, you have kids, you're married, you have a home. The Bible says wisdom is something that is very important. Count the costs before you build. You're building a beautiful vehicle here. A vehicle that ultimately is going to drive your family and your legacy if it's something that you are wholeheartedly passionate about and invested in. What I think is really cool is you see how your kids interact with it. You've noticed how your wife has already stepped into like Instagram creating, and it has become ultimately this really unique opportunity for the family to all get inside of. But right now it may look like a rust bucket, or it may look like an invisible vehicle that you're taking the dining room table chairs into the garage and you're lining them up and you're sitting in them and you're saying, close your eyes, everybody, because here's what we're getting ready to build together. But you're going to have to grab the paint, and I'm going to need you to set up some of the scheduling and talk to some of the I'm going to need, like, there's different pieces, but when the family understands that we're all building a vehicle together that ultimately is going to help provide provide resources not only for our family, but for other families down the road. It's of significant importance, but it's very important that you build on a good foundation and that you have a good basis for how you're building. So for you, I think creating the LLC, getting the vendor's license, getting the bank account set up, all of those things are practically easy. And if you have the financial capacity to do them, then do them. The next step then is figuring out who you are, what you do, and how to go out there and brand and market yourself. The cool part is, yeah, let's restore a car. The challenge is how do you do it and not sink more money in it than it's worth? How do you do it and it has more value than what you've put into it over time? Ultimately, how do I start building now with the right pieces so it ends up being the right thing? It's almost better to start slow and figure out the who, the what, the why, get the website established, get a Facebook established. That's the hard part. The keep it simple part is I need a motor, I need a body, I need tires.
Right.
You know, the hard part is like, okay, what the heck do you call this thing? How do you actually get business? And then after you market and advertise and create, how do you go sell jobs? How do you charge accordingly? How do you make sure that you're profitable? There's layers and layers and layers to continue to peel back. And that's where I think you have to be just as passionate and driven about the learning and education as you do the opportunity. Because if not, then the opportunity will exceed the learning and education, and you're going to end up frustrated pouring a lot of gasoline on something that isn't going anywhere. Or you're going to have all of the education in the world, but you're not going to have the motivation to actually fire that thing up and put your foot on the gas and get going. It's a balance of both. And that's where I think you have to start having conversations with yourself and saying, who are you? Is it a water feature business? Is it just a pond and pondless and fountainscape business? Is it a landscaping business? Have you thought about any of those things? Have you talked to your family about a name or an idea? Because those are the things that now that the practical stuff we kind of talk through, it's kind of like getting the clay on the wheel and starting to just work some of these ideas and thoughts out. That's where I would say I'm here to share experience, give you good counsel, and try to give you any wisdom through what I've learned. And at the same point, I need to hear from you what you're thinking, who you are, what you want to be, what you see yourself, and understand that it takes time sometimes. It's okay if you don't know, and if you need help figuring out or advice in figuring out, but I also don't want to overstep in the sense of giving you advice in X, Y, or Z if you're already thinking somewhere else, you know? So I want to give you the opportunity. The potter has to show up with the clay. The table will just sit there and spin. Talk to me a little bit more about some of that.
For me, I've obviously have the career going with law enforcement, and that definitely is something that I, have to work around because that is realistically where the income and everything is coming in. The main thing that I've thought is how to work around that schedule with the water features. I want to make sure that we still have that income, and then the schedule that I have allows me to have 3 off days, and then it allows me to have 4 off days, and some weeks that really gives me an opportunity to be able to have some time where I can devote to the business, that kind of time that I will need. And then, like you said, doing a slow start is really what I was kind of looking to do, because I know realistically, you're not gonna start out doing 10 projects in a month on the realistic side. I thought maybe, it might be more like 1 project a month right now while I'm getting started, and just really taking that time to really mold what I want that to look like. And the plan is to hopefully gradually increase that rate of projects as we get more comfortable with whatever team we're working with, whatever clients we have at that point, to be able to confidently say that this is kind of our system that we have in place, and we know that we can turn around projects in a certain amount of time, and realistically this is how many projects we can kind of juggle within a certain month or a time frame. That way it's more doable as far as expectation. I would love to be able to do that more and more as time goes. Like I said, that slow slow start is the best way to do that, especially with the current responsibilities and things like that. You know, you can't drop everything to fully nosedive into things because of some responsibilities, but as much time and things that we have left over after those core responsibilities is time and money that I've kind of devoted into making this slow start happen. And, you know, it's been really helpful to have family get on board with that process because they know that it's going to take time, it's going to take financials to be able to accomplish that. That's truly a big piece in that, is making sure we stay making good financial decisions in that process. That way we're not taking on more than we can bear at the moment. I think that pressure will alleviate as we go and as we become more comfortable with the process from that beginning sales pitch to that finished product. Once we shorten that amount of time between there, we can really start to incorporate more projects as we go. That's kind of where it is right now.
Let me ask you this. There's some key things in there, and part of my goal is not to just talk practical, but to also encourage and to promote and develop leadership as well. Let's just draw a whiteboard real quick, okay? And let's say there's two sides to a business. Let's say side one over here is somebody who went to college and maybe had a degree in business and was a business structure, processes, hiring, HR kind of guru. Maybe they had significant resources to invest. Maybe they found a business that they didn't necessarily want to have their hands on or in, but they wanted to start and they wanted to run. So they start a business. They're not in front of the business. They're kind of on the back end of the business, like from a social, and they have employees. They don't do the work. That's kind of side A over here. They went to Harvard Business School. It's the guy on Instagram who starts a business in 3 years and sells it for $3 million. It's the long shot, far-fetched, not really the reality. Other side of the whiteboard, organic, grassroots, built on somebody, not something, owner operated, family oriented, family driven, family supported, wears all hats, knows how to do everything in a sense, but also knows what they shouldn't do. Two different sides. And I think people have to be very practical with themselves about this. Are you the person with the business degree who's gonna start this LLC, go on a hiring spree, go hire 2 guys, go spend $50,000 on advertising, marketing, Facebook, social media, YouTube, all that, develop all that, go get the 10 jobs so the 2 guys can work, have your hands off of it, make sure that they know what they're doing, how they're doing it, they're educated? Or is it going to be something that you organically are growing yourself within your family, within your circle? Your hands are going to be on it. You're going to be the creative artist. You like working with the water, the rocks. You like putting it together. You like the creative ideas. People like you. People like supporting you. You have a following in a sense. You have family who supports you. There was a conversation I had with one of my mentors, and at one point he said, Josh, people aren't doing business with Luck Landscaping. People are doing business with Josh Luck.